everyone, it's Mithrilda and welcome back to my journey of learning to draw. So in my previous video, I talked about how during my almost 4-year art journey now, I haven't particularly enjoyed the process of making art and practicing art. Like, while I'm doing it, I'm not like, wow, this is great and this is so much fun. And in that video, I sort of came to the conclusion that that's because I haven't been doing the parts that are fun. Like, I'm sure that no matter what somebody enjoys or wants to do in life, they're not having the best time of their life doing homework and attending classes and just practicing. I haven't been doing the fun part, the part that you should be working up toward, right? Theoretically, that's making the kind of art that I want to make, expressing the kind of things I want to express. And today in this video, I wanted to talk about why I've been holding myself back and not really allowing myself to do that part, and kind of what I've been trying to do in order to get myself to make more personal art, fun art. You know, the art that makes it worth all the studying and all the headache. First of all, this quote-unquote fun art, it wasn't fun for me to do. In fact, it was just stressful sitting in front of a blank sketchbook or like a blank canvas on my screen and just having nothing to draw. And whenever I thought of something that I wanted to draw, like, ooh, like I can think of this pretty girl in this beautiful dress, it never came out the way I wanted to, and that was just really stressful. So instead of being fun, it was just kind of very not fun, at least compared to following tutorials and lessons where I knew what I was trying to do. They gave me homework and references and I was able to copy it, and that was so satisfying to be able to create something really cool at the end of it. With my personal art, where I had no direction and I had no ideas and I didn't have the skill to even execute any of the small ideas that I did have, it was just not fun. And on top of not really enjoying this quote-unquote fun art, and I felt like it should be fun, so I was like even failing at making fun art, I just felt like I wasn't ready to make all the things I wanted to make. Because I saw online, whenever you ask for critiques or anything on the internet, and then people will say like, oh, your anatomy isn't up to snuff, before you start cartoons, you should learn anatomy. And then people would say, before you learn anatomy, you should learn construction and you should learn form. Before you learn construction and form, you should learn observation. And I'm just like, oh no, like I shouldn't be drawing all this stuff. What if I pick up bad habits? What if I do it wrong? And it's not going to turn out good anyway, so why even bother doing it at this stage? I just need to keep studying and keep getting more ready to do this stuff. And on top of that, a lot of the things that would have made this easier and more enjoyable, I felt like were cheating because I heard on the internet that they were cheating. Stuff like using references or tracing over 3D models or tracing over finished art, following tutorials, using grids. And of course, I just wanted the most efficient, best way of learning art, and I was afraid to do all of these things because I'm like, oh no, like if I start using grids, then I'll always need grids, and if I start tracing, I'll always need to trace, and if I look at pictures, I'll always need pictures, and all these fears and anxieties really got to me. So my logic was, if I just keep studying the right way, all the way up until I'm skilled enough to execute these things without making mistakes, without doing things in the wrong way, without building up the bad habits, then one day I'll finally be ready to make all the stuff that I want to make. And that was 4 years ago, and now I'm here, and I still feel so far from ready to take on all of these challenges that I want to do. So then after I made my last video, I kind of went on winter break, went on vacation, took a break from everything, and I figured now's the time to start doing personal art and fun art, because I'm never gonna feel ready until I'm making it, and I'm never gonna make it until I feel ready, so I just gotta punch myself into that mindset now and figure out how to convince myself in order to start. I think part of that was that I was already signed up for an art course in January, so I knew that I could just play around for December and part of January, and I would always have that course waiting for me. I don't have to think about wasting time and like, oh, I could be using this time studying, because I know that that course with a teacher and critiques and homework are going to be so much more efficient than whatever I can do bumbling around on my own for now. And that was part of me convincing myself to start making these things. And the other part was thinking back on how I learned stuff in school. So in school, I studied math and I studied computer programming. And studying those things, it was a lot of hands-on application and using things in real life. And I chose those courses on purpose because I feel like those topics are just so much more interesting to me. How can I use this in a budget? How can I use this to make a game or a calculator or process things, right? Of course, there's ways to learn math theoretically and just do proofs, and you can learn programming theoretically, and you can learn about like all the ins and outs of logic and whatever. I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in making stuff. And in the courses where we made stuff, we just went right into it. It's not like we studied everything for years and years before we were ready. In fact, they said, hey, just play around with it, copy and paste some code, do whatever, and then you'll be a better programmer on the other side. You'll know so much more on the other side. And so looking back on my art practice and realizing, wow, I've just been like a theoretical artist for years now. I don't apply it at all. I'm not even sure where to start on that because I haven't allowed myself to explore that part of art, the part of art that I know would teach me the most. I'm too afraid to start delving into. So I just tried to make it like a class and gave myself some assignments. So one of my inspirations for getting into art in the first place was visual novels and wanting graphics for visual novels. So I was like, hey, let's make some graphics for a visual novel. And I assigned myself a couple backgrounds, a couple characters, and I feel like I just got into a whole different mindset. Now, like everything that I felt about, oh, I need everything to be so creative and perfect, and I need to learn about perspective and color theory and perfect line art before I can make a piece, it just sort of went out the window when I started with what I needed to do first. What I need is a background. How do I get a background? So I was like, hey, why don't I just find a free background online, trace it for the underlying structure and the perspective, and then see where to go from there. So I found this beautiful background. I loved the way it looked. So I'm like, let's go for it. And it was such an interesting experience. Like I realized that making these clean, beautiful lines was much harder than I anticipated. You know, whenever you see these artists doing it and their stuff is so flowy and gorgeous and it seems so simple, it really isn't. And I never really realized this because all of my studies and practices are just sketchy because I felt like that's what I needed to do. You know, of course, I gotta learn the gesture first before I can learn a full figure. And I just never pushed myself to the actual stage where I had to finish anything and like put on the details or anything like that. That was a really different experience, pushing myself all the way to the end and running into these problems that I never ran into before. Like on the window frame, I figured, what if I just put in like the blobs and then later I can clarify what the actual shape of the window frame is. It's just a basic geometric shape. How hard could it be to, you know, fill it in with the lines? It turns out actually very hard. Like I am not any kind of perspective expert or anything, but I feel like this is just, you know, a bunch of rectangular prisms put together. It should have been really easy, but it took me so much effort and I kept on drawing the wrong lines. And I'm just like, wow, this is something that I need to improve on. Like in the original piece of art, I really liked how the windows had this glow to them where it looked like there was like a really bright light coming in and it looked really realistic to me. I tried to recreate that and I realized this is so much harder than I thought it was gonna be. And in the end, I had to leave that part out because I just felt like it looked so bad. But now that's something I wanna go figure out how to learn. And when you look at the finished artworks and the lighting makes so much sense, it doesn't just happen. Like I spent so long puzzling over like how the shadows would work, how the lights would work, you know, because I've gotten a lot of practice depicting them from life, and in that process I learned about form shadows and cast shadows. But it's not so clear how to translate that into a piece of artwork where I don't really know what anything looks like and I have to render it in my own head. Like after making this piece, I realized, one, I can make something and this is really exciting. This is something that's totally usable and I'm really happy with it. And it didn't have to be perfect for me to have fun and be happy with it. It didn't have to be creative. It didn't have to be entirely my own concept. And yet here I have something that's perfectly usable and serviceable for my test game. Then after that, I wanted to make one of my character designs. So in my last video, I talked about how I followed this character illustration course and how I really enjoyed it. And by this time, it had been like a month or so since I last used any of those skills, and I just completely forgot it. I just didn't know how to do it at all. It looked so bad. So I had to go back and take it again. And in the past, whenever I forgot something or I didn't know how to do something anymore that I once took a tutorial on, I was just like, well, I guess that tutorial didn't work. I'm just gonna move on to the next one. But this time I took a step back and I'm like, what does it actually mean that I forgot how to do this stuff? I don't think it's that the course was bad. It's just I study things like I did in school, which is all at once to pass a test and then I just forget about it. You know, the brain is good at learning and it learned that I really don't need most of the knowledge that I learn. And so if I value this knowledge, then I gotta go back and refresh on it. I gotta learn it again. And so I went back through the course and I relearned it and it was great. I still really enjoy this course. I feel like it's enabled me to draw people in a way that is simple and that looks good and I can convey my ideas, which is great. And I feel like I never would have allowed myself to follow a course like this in the past because I'm just like, oh, it's not correct anatomy. It's not perfect. It's gonna teach me bad habits that are gonna ruin me in the future. And now I realize like that point, like that way of thinking only served to make me not draw the things that I wanted to draw for 4 years. And now I'm drawing so many things and I'm having fun with it and I just feel like, I guess we'll see. But then after this course, I felt a little bit constrained, so I took a different course and I thought that it was so good. Like it was really cool to take these two courses and compare and contrast the different ways they explained like the body proportions and the hair and movement and clothes. And I was even able to put in some of my own, I don't know, like artistic expression, my own artistic interpretation of things. Like in the first course, the artist, she never used black. She used grays, she used purples, she used all sorts of random colors to sketch and to do the hair and stuff. And in this new course that I was taking, she did her hair in black and all the facial features in black. And you know what? I didn't like that. I saw that and I was like, I don't really want to do that. And then I just didn't. Because I knew from the previous course that it worked out to use these wacky colors, and I felt empowered to make my own choices and pick and choose which parts of the course I wanted to incorporate into my own practice. Like this was something I was also afraid of. I'm like, I don't want to steal someone else's workflow or someone else's style. Like I want to be able to do what I want to do. And that made me just want to pursue the fundamentals only, right? Like I will learn everything about the real world and I will turn it into my own style and it'll be completely mine and it'll be so unique and perfect or something like that. And now I realize like, you know, even if I learn, like even if I follow a course that I don't agree with, that doesn't mean I have to use it or take it. Like in this course, like I was able to take the parts that I liked and leave the parts that I didn't. And I feel like that was a huge learning experience for me as well. And it turns out that having an actual objective makes it so much easier to look up resources and choose courses. Because this whole time, people keep asking me like what I want to do with my art. And I keep answering, I want to make characters. I want to draw really cool stuff. I want to make beautiful things. But do my courses and my resources and my practice really reflect that? I just feel like I've done a bunch of realism and a bunch of gestures / quick sketches, and then that's basically it. And I just don't allow myself to, you know, quote unquote settle for like some simplified cartoon style, even if it would get me closer to what I want faster. And I'm always like, like what's the best thing to do? Like what if I do this Russian drawing course, or what if I do charcoals because that's classic, you know? And now I'm just, you know, I need an environment grab environment and trace and make. I need some characters, get a character illustration course, simplify it, make it as quick and dirty and easy as possible. And now I have a background and some characters that are actually in a finished state. Like no sketchy lines, and it's in color and there's shading, and I'm like, wow, so this whole time I could have just looked up how to do it. But is that really true? Could I have done this the whole time? And that is something that I'm not so sure on, because, you know, like these courses, they did really well for me. I feel like I've been able to take the knowledge of figure drawing that I have and incorporate it with these courses, incorporate all the artistic knowledge that I've gathered up until this point, incorporate all the knowledge that I have of digital art, and make stuff out of it here. But would I recommend this to somebody who's starting out? Would I say that like this is the shortcut, it's the holy grail course? And like I can't, because I have no idea what has contributed the most to my like art skills and which resources I've used that have been completely useless to my art skills, you know? And this is what kind of like makes me skeptical about people who say like, I've been drawing for X number of years, I've used so many resources, here are the best resources for you in order to learn art. Because the thing is, you can't unlearn the things that you know. And most of the resources I see out there are for intermediate artists, for advanced artists, and I'm sure those are extremely good resources that are extremely helpful, and you would do well to study them. But are you ready for that? Because I'm guessing that when these artists started studying these resources and got a lot of value out of them, they had already built up such a foundation to the point where they were able to understand it. I feel like these character illustration courses that I took kind of were able to wrap everything I knew into a neat little bow and allow me to execute and take it that final step toward making something that looks cute and finished. But would I have gotten the same value out of it if I didn't do 2 years of Figuary, where I did figure drawings and gesture drawings every day for a month for 2 years? Would it have been the same if I haven't gone to all these life drawing sessions? Would I have gotten as much out of it if I never took the Brent Eviston figure drawing course? Would I have gotten as much out of it if I never watched those Proco videos that I started off my art journey with and really didn't like them because they were hard and they kind of made me quit art for a while? You know, like, I don't know if I would have learned it as well if I didn't have that background knowledge. So yeah, I guess that's just something to keep in mind whenever you are thinking about the resources that you're taking, because we really have no idea what's the most helpful, because none of us are coming into a course or into an experience from the same place, from the same background, and it's just hard to know. I wouldn't say I'm the best figure artist, but if someone were to ask me, how can I do exactly what you're doing? I would have no idea how to answer that. Do I give a list of everything I've ever done? Or the most useful? Or the things that I feel like I improved the most after? But that could have taken years of setup to even get to that point where I could improve that quickly. So then the last couple projects I've been working on are these redraws. So I like to redraw my self-portrait every January around my birthday, and I also wanted to do another redraw as well because I was afraid that my self-portrait wouldn't come out well, so I wanted to do a practice round. So this first piece of art is one that I made back in April 2020. It's these two girls, they're going on a date, and this was my first finished illustration. And by finished, I mean that it has color and that it has a background. Like, the subjects are not floating in space. And I was like, yes, this is my first finished artwork. And it's one of my very few artworks in general, because like I said, I didn't make personal art. I didn't make anything that was finished because, like, you know, it's hard to persevere to the end when I know that there's really nothing good waiting for me at the end. So I wanted to redraw this because I thought it would be fun. And so when I was in the idea stage doing some thumbnails and sketches, I was like, wow, I feel like I've already improved, because in the past, I would not do multiple sketches. I would do one sketch and then flesh it out, and I'm like, yep, this is the end, because it just took so long for me to sketch. You know, like if it takes me like 30 minutes to get out one sketch, I'm not going to be sitting here doing like 10 of them like I see these pro artists doing, but this time it just took me a few minutes each, and I'm just like, wow. And I'm pretty sure that these came out way better than what I did back in the day. So it was during this illustration that I realized, color theory is still hard. Because for my other illustrations, in the first character illustration course that I took, the teacher just provided us with some color palettes to use, and they all harmonized with each other and they were beautiful and I loved using them. But now I'm trying to draw something that, has a color palette already, and I couldn't just use the limited selection that I'd been using before, and I realized, oop, I don't have any practice with this, so it's gonna be bad. But I don't know, I had some sort of peace with it. I'm like, all I can do is my best. Even so, I still have the rest of the process that I can follow. I think that's a huge difference too, is like now I have a process. Now I know what to do. I do the skin and then the clothes, and I do the hair, I do the shadows, and I know that if I follow every step, then I'll get something that's finished out of it. That's something that I really liked about Evolve too, is because they teach you step by step how to go from nothing to a finished painting. And now I know how to go from nothing to a finished character, and I have that process, which is really cool. But I also ran into some other problems that I wasn't expecting, like the fact that layer management is not something that you just stumble into. So I was doing this, I had 2 characters, I had so many clipping masks all over the place, I had multiply layers, I had ones with alpha lock, I had things just grouped up everywhere. Everything was called layer 32, layer 33, and it was just a huge mess. And then I tried to duplicate all the layers and then merge them down, and then all the clipping masks went out of whack. I'm just like, oh my god, I never thought that this would be such a problem. And I realized that, that's a skill that I have to learn too. I'm gonna either have to steal somebody else's method or come up with a good one of my own. And also things with destructive and non-destructive edits. And I kept on drawing on the wrong layer, deleting and erasing things that I shouldn't. Like this shadow that is projected onto the wall, I had to fiddle around with so much, and I kept on messing it up, and I had to remake it. And then we have like this beige wall and then the green floor, and I decided, oh, what if I like blur the line between them? But then that made it so that when I used the paint bucket tool, it wouldn't recolor the floor properly because the middle part was merged, so then I couldn't change the floor color, and I just ran into all these problems that I would only run to if I made it to the end of a finished piece. And I realized, wow, I am really missing out on so much education by not finishing my artworks, by not pushing myself to make these things. And lastly, I finally worked on my self-portrait. And something that made me really sad is that I realized I didn't do one last year because I hadn't been practicing my figures at all. I was just focusing on Evolve, and I remember just being so stressed out that if I drew a self-portrait, then it would show that I hadn't improved at all. And so then I just ignored it and put it off until now I'm here a year later with no self-portrait for 2021, and it would have been so nice to see how I've improved. But moving on from that, I think I waited a little bit too long to do this because I started working on it and then my brainstorm class started. And so then I was so busy doing the homework there that I could only work on this in small chunks. But I realized that it was okay because I had a method now and I knew what I was doing. And so I could just pick up work the next day or the next few days and keep going. And it was turning out, and that was so exciting to me because like one of my biggest fears in art is like I don't want all of my good art pieces to be flukes, like I want to have the skills to create and recreate the things that I want. And I considered using references and stuff for this piece, but I decided against it because I made some rules up back when I did my first self-portrait that all of my self-portraits, at least for this particular redraw series, were going to be from imagination without any references because I just wanted to keep track of how well I was improving and how well I was doing. And I felt like it was interesting because as I was taking the course and doing the homework there and then switching back to working on this self-portrait, I realized that I was using the concepts from my class in order to make a better illustration here, especially like as I was getting toward the end and I was messing with some fun lights and shadows, which is what we're doing in class. I'm like, wow, look at me. I am applying these concepts. I see now how the fundamentals can help me improve my illustration and my fun art and what I want to do personally. But I'm not going to make these connections unless I'm working on that stuff that I want to do. Otherwise, it'll always be theoretical. It'll always be like, how can I draw a better rock? And not how can I better draw the things that I want to draw. And I feel like I'm really happy with the outcome this year. I'm really happy with it, especially because I made changes to the colors. Like this whole time I've been such a purist about colors. I'm just like, my hair is black. It needs to be black. My sweater is pink. It needs to be pink. I don't own rain boots. I can't draw myself with rain boots. But okay, I'm gonna make a little confession here. And mostly these colors are because they were on the color palette from the first course, and I knew that they would look good together. But I feel like, hey, that's something I learned as well. And I was able to make this really satisfying illustration, and I'm just really happy with it. So yeah, it turns out art can be pretty fun when you start doing the things that you would enjoy. Like, how do you feel about personal or fun art? Has it always just been something you did ever since you were young, and then as you got older, you started adding on educational resources? Are you also stuck in that rut where you feel like you just need to keep learning and learning and you're never ready to start creating? Part of me wonders, if I didn't have all this experience and knowledge coming into this, would I have gotten as much out of these courses? Would I have even enjoyed doing this? Because, you know, in the past I also tried making illustrations, like the first picture that I redrew, but I wasn't really happy with it. I didn't like the process because it was confusing. I feel like only because of that grind and doing stuff that I didn't enjoy that I can finally do stuff that I do enjoy now. Or maybe not. Maybe I didn't have to wait all this time in order to get to a point where I start having fun. I don't know. And it's a bit stressful not knowing. But yeah, so that's what I've been up to for the past month and a half. I've started the foundation sketching course at Brainstorm now, and coming up, I'm going to be making updates on what I'm learning, what kind of homework I've been doing up in there, and what it's like. I hope you all stay safe and healthy out there, and remember that talent is a myth. Now, get back to work.